Can a BIOS update increase FPS for AMD Ryzen PCs? This video will be short and sweet, and as the title explains, will seek to solve the mystery involving AM4 UEFIs. You see, with Intel, this hasn't lately been a concern. When Sky and KB families hit the shelves, motherboard manufacturers already loaded up their fine-tuned firmware, ergo, performance jumps from subsequent BIOS updates were minimal, and they're typically not suggested unless you have a serious problem with the motherboard at hand. But with Ryzen, things are a bit backwards, and you can thank AMD for that, not the motherboard manufacturers. In fact, one anonymous motherboard rep went off about how AMD didn't allot enough time for these manufacturers to procure the firmware necessary to extract the full potential of Ryzen CPUs. What we ended up with was a messy launch plagued with RAM frequency issues, which still persist by the way, overclock limitations, and as you'll see shortly, frame rate disparities. So what I did was test two different motherboards with my AMD R7 1700X. The first, the AX370 Gaming K7, GB's finest AM4 board. The second was the ASRock X370 Tai-Chi. I ran the same GTA 5 benchmark with the same presets before and after the BIOS update. The starting BIOSes used were the ones that shipped on launch day around February 11th or so. The second batch of BIOSes flashed were these here, the latest releases as of March 25th. Other specifications include a single GTX 1070 from EVGA running at stock, 16GB of DDR4 at 2400 MHz, clocking any higher is still rather sketchy on the Gigabyte board, even with 2 DIMMs installed versus 4, and a CPU frequency of 3.9 GHz, which most should be able to obtain with a 1700X and a decent cooler. Now, it's off to the races. The Gigabyte board is up first. On the F2 BIOS, the minimum frame rate was 75, averaging to just under 102 FPS. With the latest BIOS, F3B, my frame rate actually fell to 69 on the minimum side and only 98 on average. Now if you're wondering whether this falls into the margin of error, don't worry, you aren't alone, so I retested after flashing back to the F2 BIOS only to find this, the same minimum as the previous F2 run and a 1 FPS difference on average. So in Gigabyte's case, it's safe to say that FPS in GTA 5 decreased as a result of the latest BIOS update. But let's test the ASRock board. I should mention, and they didn't tell me to say this by the way, they've been doing an excellent job staying on top of their firmware updates. You'll typically find a large list of UEFIs to choose from. Development is almost never a disappointment here. Now on the earliest BIOS, I received these results, 65 on the low side, 95 on average. These scores are lower than both of our Gigabyte runs. But there's more to the story. After updating to the latest firmware, version 1.6 for the Tai-Chi, FPS increased by nearly 20% across the board, 76 for the minimum, 110 on average. Here are the 4 scenarios on the same graph. So what does this mean? If you have a Ryzen CPU, obviously a Ryzen motherboard, I recommend staying on top of those motherboard firmware updates. You never know, one could come along that could drastically change your gaming performance. That's how it is going to be for these Ryzen CPUs, especially R5 CPUs. You'll start to see things really turn around for Ryzen 5 once these BIOSes are refined. So I recommend staying on top of those. Don't update to the latest firmware automatically. I do recommend checking other sites before doing that, making sure that the busy bees have confirmed that that BIOS is a good BIOS and one that you do want to download and flash. But for now, at least keep on top of what is being released for your motherboard, because a lot of people will just install the board, install the CPU, and just move on from there. But you'll find that as these motherboard BIOSes roll out, as they're being refined time and time again, you'll be able to overclock your RAM a bit more, you'll be able to overclock your CPU a bit more, and you might even just incur a few extra frames simply from the BIOS update itself, which can have a huge impact on operating system stability, things like that, which we're not used to seeing on the Intel side because, well, with Intel releases lately, motherboard manufacturers have had much more time to prepare those UEFIs before the initial launch of those CPUs. So all that to say this, Ryzen's still a bit shaky. I still can't hit 3000 MHz on my Gigabyte board, overclockability is sketchy at best, temperatures are almost always inaccurate, and as we verified here, yet another variable can impact gaming performance. We can play the blame game all you'd like, but the fact of the matter is, things aren't quite there yet for the Red team. I'm seeing it firsthand with Red Sky, my new editing rig boasting a 1700X. I'm all in on what's left of the hype, and I'm impatiently waiting for further updates. I'm not on the AMD witch hunt, I don't care what's in my system, I can't see the processor in my system, I only care about 2 things, performance and value. AMD can win it, especially with Ryzen 5, but the kinks need to be worked out first. Shouldn't be too long now, although if you're wondering, I still do stand by my statement regarding Ryzen 5 and the Intel i5 lineup that I made right here. I bet that makes you cringe inside. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, thumbs down for the opposite, be sure to click the subscribe button if you haven't already, and we'll catch you in the next video where I review the LG G6. Is it better than the S8? Well, no, but should you still consider it? Hell yes. This is Salazar Studio. Thanks for learning with us.